Wow, thank you so much for being here. I'm delighted to have been invited. I've never been upstaged by giant fruit, but this is so good. I am delighted to kick off this afternoon's session. I will be talking to you about the sonic thermal. The sonic thermal. I ran that title, by the way, by my sister, and she said, "Wow, what?" So I knew I was good. Let me tell you about how the sonic thermal started to show up in my life and really informed the direction of my life and the decisions that I would make. When I was a tiny girl, my father, who was a bassoonist with the Metropolitan Opera, would be practicing. This was when I was a tiny girl. And I was told that when he would play, he'd take a break from his practicing, and he would play for me the Brahms melody to the folk song Greensleeves. And I was told, there's my dad, that's me at age 2, and I was told that as he would play, I would start to spin. I would just spin, I would spin, I would spin and twirl and spin, and when he was done, I was done. That's how it first showed up. And then a few years later, I guess age 4, I started to notice that when my mother would be vacuuming, the drone of that sound would lull me into a very relaxed snooze. Yeah, so something was happening with me and tonality. It was lifting me and transporting me, which wreaked havoc with my school career, by the way. Because while I was being told these very important details of a lot of information that I'd never be using in most of my life, I was not noticing what the teachers were saying to me because I was always hearing first the tonality of their voices. And then I would have to scramble later to a friend or even to said teacher to find out what she was or he was trying to talk to me about. And so that was rough. And yet I was in the right place. I was in New York City. And the sounds of New York City were all about the sonic thermal, this cacophony that was so unbelievable. It was horns, it was honking, it was car motors and bus motors and subway roars and foot traffic. And then in the midst of it, late at night where I lived, you would actually hear the clopping of horses from the horse-drawn carriage. It was unbelievable. It was just perfect poetry that even in the midst of that congestion, it somehow made me feel very, very cozy. Around that time, I first heard Gershwin, and I first heard Ella Fitzgerald. And when I first heard Ella, the poignancy, the yearning of her voice not only lifted me on these thermals and not only transported me, it created a kind of light for the path that I was destined to follow, which was sort of her path. And when I first heard Gershwin's Concerto in F, I couldn't have been more than 9 years old. The thermal of that, the sonic pull of that squeezed tears out of me, squeezed tears to sobbing and weeping because of the unexpressible beauty that was expressed by Gershwin and that orchestra. So that's how it was showing up in my life, and the only way I could explain it was a sonic thermal. As I got older and I became a young singer-songwriter, I was amazed at how that had taken hold in my life. I became a published poet when I was 15 years old, and the thermal there was trying to articulate language. When you're first a writer, everything is fodder for inspiration. If you sneeze, it becomes a song. It's just the way it is. And so trying to play with language is how the gush of this alternate writing voice showed up for me. I had the great blessing to study songwriting with Paul Simon when I was 17 years old. And he said in our class, he said, all of the stories have been told. It is the way you tell your story that is your stamp of authenticity. And at that time, the airwaves were filled with young singer-songwriters who had been catching their own sonic thermals. It was evident. The Beatles, Stevie Wonder, Joni Mitchell, and my particular muse, Laura Nyro. I mean, for instance, when the Beatles sang, "Oh, blah dee, oh, blah da, life goes on, brah, la la, how the life goes on." Well, I can't tell you exactly what "oh, blah dee" means, but we know what it means. When my muse, when my queen, Laura Nyro, said, "Can you Surrey, can you picnic? Come on, and Surrey down to that Stone Soul picnic." Well, she didn't say, "Can you sashay?" We would have all known what that means. She said, "Can you Surrey?" And she didn't just say Surrey, she said, "Can you Surrey?" And I said, "I'll be right there at that Stone Soul picnic." So that was the way it was showing up for me. It was so luscious. It was so wonderful to learn about reshaping the American popular song through those beautiful young lenses. I had been raised with the traditional, wonderful American popular songbook, starting with Stephen Foster through Rodgers and Hammerstein. But this was something new. This was touching another deeper part. I really believe that writing shows up in two ways. There's writing from the eyebrows up. There's writing from the heart down. The heart down is much more interesting because I think that's the place where the source language is. I believe that is the source of the thermal, that sonic thermal where you are just so pulled that you go, and that sonic thermal takes you to that place of that invisible dot that connects you to the next invisible dot. It connects you to that next invisible rung on the ladder where you can climb more, where you can climb higher, where you can get closer to that unarticulated, expressed longing that comes from your source. Fast forward, I am now teaching at USC at the Thornton School of Music. I have just recorded my 20th album called You Gotta Love the Life. Well, this is, thank you. This is very interesting for me. They're all labors of love, but this was just a wondrous adventure. My students had told me that they would come into my class every couple of months and they would show up with their CDs that only had 5 or 6 songs on it, but there was shrink wrap and there was photographs and there was artwork and credits, and I asked them, how did you do this? And they said, "Well, we did it through crowdfunding. You should do that too." And I said, "Great, what is that?" And so they explained that to me, and one of my students became my project manager, and we had a magnificent time. We had great guest artists show up, Al Jarreau and Dionne Warwick, the late Joe Sample, and Stevie Wonder and Dave Koz. It was just unbelievable. It was a major love fest. But the thing is that the title, You Gotta Love the Life, was the last song written. That is true in theater, by the way. Many times if you go to a musical, the opening is the last thing that's written because until they have the entire score and the production is ready, they don't really know what the show is about, and so the opening synthesizes what you're about to see. Okay, so You Gotta Love the Life was the last song written for this album, and people were waiting. We had musicians and a studio and no song. But what I was waiting for was that language, because there's a short list of songs about show business, and they come at show business from different angles. On Broadway is trying to get into the business, putting it together by the great Sondheim is about the process of dealing with inspiration. There's No Business Like Show Business is a general overview, and I wanted to lay claim to my 45 years of this version of normal, which appeals to me. So Sharon Vaughn and I, my collaborator, we fashioned a first verse and a chorus, but then she had to go back to Stockholm where she lives. So I was left to work on the rest of the song, and I got the language of the second verse, but I was up to writing the bridge, and I'm a really old-fashioned bridge girl. I'm all about the bridge, because in the bridge of a song, that's where you sort of synthesize what the whole song has been about. And in a song, concision is the key. Concision, 2 ideas in 1 line, because in a song, you have such a bit of time. You have 3.5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, to create a world, and each line has to move your world forward, so the audience wants to keep listening, so you keep them engaged. All right, so I couldn't quite figure out what this bridge of this song, You Gotta Love the Life, was about, because my angle of this song was about the grit, the daily grit of this walk that I have chosen, and yet somehow there is joy even in the midst of the grit. It's just the way it is. this artistic path is not for the faint of heart, but this version of normal suits me to a T. So anyway, so I'm looking for the language for the bridge of this song. And I do what I often do when I'm sort of feeling it from the eyebrows up, which I'm not terribly interested in, because the eyebrows up is sort of like typing. You know, I really wanted to access that deeper place. So I do what I often do when I'm trying to access that deeper place. I stood in the shower. I turned on the water. I write away from the piano because the body has old patterns, the brain has old familiar patterns for the fingers. So I walk away from the piano and I just try to sing ideas and until I can sing them fully and make new grooves in my brain, and I know that I've locked in the song and its source deep. So I'm standing in the shower, and it's the sound of the water against the tiles that probably loosens, well, fruit, something like that. And it feels like it comes from sort of the right rear of my brain. I don't know what's happening with the right rear of my brain. I'm just telling you what it feels like. And all of a sudden, I was looking up. There must be some kind of a brain-language connection, because when I look up, I start to see the interior of my camera, my interior camera, and what it is seeing. And I started to hear late nights, missed flights, waking up and wondering what city I'm in. Children, that is my life. There are many times when I wake up and I know I have a show to do and I can't tell you where I am. It's just the way it is. It's no judgment assigned to it. It's just the way it is. But once I had that first line, late nights, missed flights, waking up and wondering what city I'm in, the crashing of those W's, waking up wondering what city I'm in, I could feel it go deep. I could feel the words coming from deep, and I knew where that invisible dot just showed up so I could connect it to the next dot. If I could just keep going on that thermal, keep finding it, and I did, and I finished writing it, I finished writing it, I finished writing it. So finally, the musicians had something to play, I had something to sing, and when the album comes out in February, act surprised. What can I say? But I'm going to leave you with this title track from my 20th album, and if they will run this next photo, you will be able to see the cover of it. I look like the queen of my own nation, don't I? All right, so I'm going to leave you with the title track of my 20th album after all this time. You gotta love the life, and thank you so much for inviting me. Here it is. Hey! Hey! Oh, oh. And it's dragging you all over town. Oh, you wanna play your music, better show your stuff or then knock it down. It gets you down before you know it. Turn around and do it again. You gotta love the life, the hunger in your heart. You make you got